In the future authoring program, what we ask people to do is, well, think about your life along 6 dimensions. What do you want for your... So the goal is this. You're going to take care of yourself. You're going to have a life in 3 years that justifies its suffering. That's the goal. So you can invent the damn life, but you have to think what you would be satisfied with so you wouldn't be all bitter and resentful. It's like, okay, what do you want from your family? What do you want from your friends? How are you going to educate yourself? What do you want for your career? How are you going to use your time outside of work? How are you going to handle drugs and alcohol and other temptations like that? How are you going to keep yourself mentally and physically healthy? And these are open questions. Like, you get to answer them. The idea is you can have whatever you want, but you have to figure out what it is. It has to be realistic, and you have to figure out what it is. It's okay. So now develop a vision. What's your life going to be like in 3 to 5 years? So you write it down. Then we do something else, which is, okay, your bad habits and your resentment and your bitterness and all of that, your procrastination gets completely out of hand, and you auger down, and you're in your own personal version of hell in 3 to 5 years. What does that look like? Well, everyone knows that. It's like everyone can look into the future and think, well, if I keep going on this dark path, this is where I'll end up. Well, then you've got little hell outlined for yourself to run away from, and you got a little heaven outlined for yourself to run towards, and then you're motivated. Because sometimes, you know, you're just hopeful. I would like a good thing to happen. It's like, yeah, but you know, I'd like to drink half a bottle of whiskey tonight too. It's like, so which is it going to be? Well, just being hopeful about the future might not be enough, but then you think, oh, I see, like, there's that little hell thing that I outlined that's waiting for me. And maybe I'm afraid of taking the next step forward because it's demanding and challenging. It's like, yeah, I'm afraid of that, but I'm way more afraid of where I might end up if I don't get my act together. And people should be. That's why there are conceptions of hell in so many religions. It's like, hell's a real place. Whether it's eternal, that's a whole different question. Whether it's waiting for you in the afterlife, that's a whole different question. But if you've never met anyone in hell, you haven't lived very long. You haven't had your eyes open.
Yeah, it's undeniable. That feeling of total, complete misery is undeniable. And
yeah, especially when it's compounded by the fact that you know you did it to yourself. Yes. That's the real fun. That's the real fun part. It's like, I'm having a bitch of a time and I richly deserve it. Jesus, that's rough, man.
This is another concept that doesn't have a voice right now. This is another, I mean, this is a giant part of being a human being. And instead of identity politics and right versus left, I think these right versus left battles, oftentimes what they are is simply the battleground for the conflicts in your own mind.
Yeah. Better to have the conflict in yourself. That's another thing I really learned, well, not only from the New Testament, but a fair bit from that. You know, the idea is that, well, there's evil in the world of all sorts, and some of it's the evil in other people, and some of it's the evil in your brother's heart. But the part of it that you can really do something about, that's the malevolence in your own heart. You can actually do something about that, and that's actually way more useful than you think. So, because if you can face it in you, then you start to understand it. And that also makes you strong enough to identify it and to fight it when you see it in the external world. Plus, you don't do any harm. It's like there's lots of people all over the world going out and doing reprehensible things. And you might say, well, you should go out and protest against them. Then sometimes you should. But most of the time you should think, where am I falling short of the ideal? My own ideal. It doesn't have to be one that someone puts on you. Where am I less than I should be? Where am I bitter? Where am I making the world a worse place than it has to be? Like, you ask yourself those questions, you'll be in for a big shock. You say, well, what would happen if you stopped doing that? That's what 12 Rules for Life is about. It's like, stop saying things that make you weak. Stop telling lies that you know to be lies. Stop doing things you know to be useless and counterproductive. Aim high. Adopt some responsibility. And then see what the hell happens. It's like, it'll work. And that's what I'm hoping people will do.
Yeah, I'm hoping people will do that too. And I think if more people live their life in this sort of a manner, I think we're going to have less differences in terms of our ideologies and more of an understanding that people have different ways of looking at things and different ways of living. And this combat between people, this internal strife that manifests itself in this combat between ideologies, I think you are much more inclined to let other people live their lives if you're living your life in a satisfactory manner.
That's exactly it. I have a chapter in there on raising kids. It says, don't let your kids do anything that makes you dislike them. It's like, well, that's first predicated on the observation that you're quite a monster, and it would be better for your kids if they didn't get on your bad side. And like, again, because I'm a clinical
You
psychologist.
keep saying monster. Why do you use that term?
Because I've watched families, like I've seen families where it's as if every single person in the family has their hands around the neck of the family member that's close to them, and they're squeezing, but only tight enough to strangle them in 20 years.
But you're not always using it as a pejorative. You've also used it, you should become a monster. You should be a monster.
Yeah, but that's you shouldn't be, it shouldn't be accidental. That's the thing.
So what do you mean by monster then, in a positive sense? Like you should be
a monster. Oh, that's easy. A positive monster is somebody who says no and means it. Because when you say no, what you mean is, there isn't anything you can do to me that will make me agree to do this.
Why is that a monster?
Because you have to be, because no one will take you seriously otherwise. No one will take you seriously. Like, no means if you keep pushing this, something that you do not like will happen to you. That's what no means. You don't have any strength of character unless you can put up a fight. You know, and to be able to say no to something is to be able to put up a fight. So, and you can't do that if you can be pushed around. You'll just get argued into submission, or you'll feel guilty because you're causing conflict or something like that.
But isn't there confusion using those terms as a positive and a negative? Maybe there's another word instead of monster.
Well, there is the potential. There is the potential for confusion. You say, well, is that something that can be?
Because I think a monster is a horrible thing. I don't think of it as being like a wall. Like someone who is just rock solid in their belief system and rock solid in their understanding of themselves.
Well, when you fight someone who's formidable, say, what do you think of the person that you're fighting? Like, how would you characterize them? They have a monstrous side because they can bring substantial physical force to bear on the situation and be willing to do it. So they're not naive and harmless by any stretch of the imagination, right? They have a well-developed capacity for mayhem. And you think, well, is that monstrous? It's like, well, I would say, yes.
I would say fierce.
Fierce, fine, let's go with that.
Yeah, because someone who's fierce and formidable is not necessarily a monster. You know, just I think of a monster as being just an awful person who's done awful things and just, you know.
Okay, well, so but fair enough. Well, so back to the situation with your kids. Well, you definitely don't want to have your kids act in a way that awakens your inner monster.
Right.
Let's put it that way. And so you need to organize your family with a certain amount of discipline and a certain amount of structure so that you get to do what you want, which is back to the point that you made earlier, so that you're happy to have your kids around, so that you won't take revenge on them. And so you want to lay your life out so that it's providing you what you need to not be bitter and to work for your best interests and for the interests of everyone else. That would be lovely. And I think it's attainable. You know, because the book is very dark, and I'm a very dark guy in some ways because I've looked at the terrible things that people do to one another.
That's the fascinating way of looking at it. You think of yourself as dark? Because I don't.
Oh, well,
I
that's
don't
good.
think of you as dark.
Oh, that's good.
You're a very friendly guy. I think you're very serious, and especially about these very complicated issues. And I think that's one of the reasons why you have made this gigantic wave in online discourse and people discussing these very tumultuous times that we live in, is because you're a guy that did extrapolate. You're a guy who did look at that C-16 bill and look at Marxism and go, do you know where this is headed? And you were the guy that had the courage to say murderous. And people are like, what the fuck is he talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And you had to spell it out and explain it. And when you do, you realize why this is so significant to you.
Yeah, well, the tribalism issue that you were
Yes.
discussing earlier doesn't seem to be all that, what would you say, debatable, that if we degenerate into tribalism, the probability of bloodshed becomes vastly enhanced. It's like, well, that always happens when people
Right.
devolve into tribalism. So, and I'm pointing to a particular kind of tribalism. I guess the darkness is that, you know, I'm very aware of the terrible things that people not only are likely to do to each other, but do to each other all the time. I mean, it's about 40% for divorce rate, right? You have to go through a fair bit of ugliness to get to divorce.
Canadians are nicer than Americans. Maybe you guys have 40%.
Maybe. I think it's
we're
pretty
like
similar.
80%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually it's 50% here. somewhere around that line. But yeah, you have to go through a lot. That's
Yeah, and
Chris
a lot
Rock
of
had
a
a
lot
joke
that's
about
really
that.
ugly too, and
Chris Rock had a joke about that. He's like 50% of people get divorced. He goes, but that's just the people who had the courage to leave. He goes, how many cowards just stay and suffer? And meanwhile, he wound up getting divorced a few years later in a horrible divorce. So, true story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good point. Yeah. I think we need more people who are actualized human beings, more people who understand themselves, more people who have gone through adversity, both in real life and personal, in terms of their understanding of their own growth, of their own potential, and their own understanding of how they've managed their life, their mind, their actions. And the more we have people that have personal sovereignty, the better we'll be able to have these conversations.
Well, that'd be the hope. One of the things I've been suggesting to people is that they pick something difficult to do. I read this funny little paragraph by Kierkegaard. It was written about 1840, and he was thinking about his role as a student and writer. And he was a student and writer forever. He never really had a career apart from that. And he said that he wasn't one of these people who was capable of inventing something wonderful to make life easier for everyone, like so many people were doing, during the Industrial Revolution. He said, well, maybe I'm one of these people whose benefit to society will be that I will make things more difficult for everyone, because there will come a time when what people want, they don't want ease, they want difficulty instead. And I think, well, that is what people want. That is what they want. You think, well, I want an easy, happy life. It's like, no, actually, that isn't what you want.
I think what people want is things that are difficult that they can overcome.
Yeah, right. That's right. They want an optimal challenge.
Well,
that's
there's
a whole
feeling
different thing.
When you overcome something, when you do something difficult, whether it's, I've never written a book, but I assume when you write a book, when you're done writing that book, there's a great feeling of accomplishment, because it's very difficult to do. That feeling of for me, it's like when I put together a comedy special, or when I, just anything that's difficult. There's a feeling like I did it. I did it.
Yeah, well, one of the mysteries is why that feeling exists.